I don't have answers, but there is a lot of curiosity about the advantages of bundling. The second question will always be raised. Can it be good value for money when the government can always borrow cheaper? It's a moot question if the government can't borrow anymore. Right? I mean, you have to realize a lot of private money sloshing around the globe right now. I mean, that sounds a bit perverse, but there is a lot of money. We see it in Toronto. 40% of our housing market is driven by offshore investors. One of my former students at MIT told me he's bought 13 condos in Toronto over the last 15 years. I said, why? He said, it's my pension fund. So we have with the downturn in India, the fact that gold is expensive, you can't invest in real estate in the Middle East, you know, people are looking for ways to invest a lot of money. And I'm not necessarily saying they'll turn to infrastructure, but these infrastructure funds that I see seem to be attracting an amazing amount of capital into them. Because I get these alerts every day and I'm looking thinking, I mean, I can't believe we closed on a $6 billion fund. So that it's comparable to real estate in that way, and that there are these private equity funds looking for deals and competing with the pension funds. What's the basis of value for money? You know, is it phony? Is it real? What discount rate do you put in? Should the discount used for value for money be risk-adjusted rate or the riskless rate? You know, some people say, well, if you're going to do it, it should really be like 3 or 4%. Does the available evidence suggest that PPPs have delivered value for money? Who knows? We're still early in the cycle, and there's no history, there's no empirical evidence. How do you handle uncertainty? Are there things that we haven't thought about in some of these models? In what way should PPPs accounted? How do you account for them on your books? How does government really account? In Britain, someone began a website, and every time a PPP was issued, they added how much monthly payment the government had. Because that's one of the issues, is you're now committing yourself to write a check. And so someone began to total up how much money the government had to write every month on a check. And it became an embarrassment for the government, because no one had added up, no one had done the math. Can PPPs adequately provide for the public interest, or is the private interest kind of overpowering? What factors make, you know, what is a successful PPP? The industry will tell you one thing, the labor unions will tell you another thing.
One question before you leave go back. The discount rate.
Yeah.
We talked about in our class about a risk-adjusted rate of discount. And you came up with a 7% discount rate. And it looks like you're discounting all of the money's flowing. And one of our students, paying attention to class, he said, well, shouldn't that be the weighted average cost of capital? There's a good argument to say that, yes, the discount rate should reflect the weighted average cost of capital. We put in his assumptions of financing and came up with and solved for the equity return, required return, which is about 45%. If that possibly be true.
No. And the problem is that the government tells you what the discount rate to use.
Right. So that 7% is probably too high.
Yeah.
It's probably closer to 4.5%.
Yeah.
In the current situation.
Right. But what the government is doing is they're picking a number so they can compare apples and apples. And they're saying you put 7% to the public sector comparator and 7% to your model. Okay. Now people say it's too high. And they say, yeah, probably true, but use 7%. Because it's for us it's reasonable. And they don't seem willing to defend that.
But the higher the discount rate penalizes the benefits at the end.
Yeah.
So the higher the discount rate, the more the beneficiary are penalized.
Yeah,
So if you had a 7% rate of return, you're penalizing more than if you had a 4%
Yeah.
rate of discount. So it's kind of,
my current assignment, the current assignment I have in my class is this very issue, is doing the value for money, what is the right discount rate? It's based on a paper that came out of Australia, which is questioning. There's been a number of academic papers on this very topic of the value for money formula. I can send them to you if you're interested in what is the appropriate discount rate.
this would be good, if we got to figure that out.
Yeah, it's a very imperfect science of doing it, but I haven't seen anyone else come up with a better model. And I'll just finish up, and then if there are questions, I'll have a few questions. So if you look at the challenges, there's a lot of opposition to opening public infrastructure to competitive market pricing. Despite the fact that some infrastructure is privately owned and operated. Okay? I mean, I get power to my house from a private utility. I get cable to my house, and yet I'm told I can't get water because somehow water requires the public to own it. And then I say, but why? In France, they have a better water system than anywhere in the world, and it's private. So there's a lot of opposition to allowing the private market to enter in however you characterize it, into some infrastructure. What you have to realize is what's behind all of this is PPPs don't work if the government doesn't have a monopoly. And what the PPP is doing, it's transferring a part of that monopoly over into the private sector. And governments don't necessarily like to give up monopolies. Even at the municipal level, we had a huge fight over garbage collection. The city argued that garbage collection had to be done by the public sector because of sanitation and everything else. And the rate of absenteeism of garbage collectors was 32%. So almost 1 out of every 3 employees was absent. And they said the can was too heavy and they strained their back, etc. So there's a lot of opposition to governments giving up their monopoly. So, but natural monopolies and high sunk costs suggest that competitive supply is unlikely to emerge. So sometimes it takes so much money to overcome that monopoly, the private sector don't want to get into it. Urban transit would be a good example. If you know Tokyo, I don't know, anyone here been to Tokyo? Yeah, they have, their rapid transit is one system is private, one system is public. The private system is clean, efficient, the public system isn't. So now, it's historic that they have both systems in operation, but would a city ever give up its transit? I don't know. You also touch on the issue of what are called strategic supply. We can't allow the privatization of water because it's a strategic supply. Then I say, well, just a minute, 40% of the water in the city of Toronto leaks out of the pipes after we processed it. Doesn't make sense. I don't know what it is in Washington, but historically, if you go through the United States, you'll find water mains that are, the old wood strung together with baling wire. So if it's a strategic supply issue, why are you allowing 40% of it to dribble away? No company could allow 40% of their product to disappear. Of late, government monopoly on infrastructure has come under increasing scrutiny and mounting political pressure for change, resulting in growing commercialism. One of the most successful areas that now this isn't so much a PPP as a kind of modification, but a number of years ago, the Canadian government realized that it shouldn't be in the business of air flight control. That it was just not investing the money, and they set up a kind of public-private corporation, and it's called Navstar. So all of our air control is controlled by essentially a private company. Now, what they did is on the board of the company, they put very unusual. They put the users. They put people so the airlines are on the board. They have passenger representatives on the board, and they have government on the board. And so the issue always is the airlines want to keep down the cost as much as possible, only to the extent that they can fly safely. The passengers want the rates set such that they're not going to be delayed, and the government wants to ensure public interest. This system has worked beautifully. If you actually take the company apart, it's really an SPV. It's got zero value because essentially it's like a shell, like an SPV, and everything is done similar structure, and so they run the whole air navigation control system. So, and I don't think the public know this, or somebody would be yelling and screaming, but it's well run. So sometimes you can get away without. We privatized our appraisal. What do you call it? In the tax department. Systems, all done by. What happened? The government set up a corporation. Said, "Why are we doing this? We don't have the technical expertise." So they set up a separate company of which they own 50%, and the private owned 50%. The company increased in value so much that the government sold their 50% to a pension fund owners. So there are ways that government will give up monopolies and structure it in some ways. So there's other examples of the government bringing in private sector expertise. I mean, the government didn't know how to appraise land. And so now it's a private company. And of course, the quality of data we get is much, much better. So, any other questions? This is a lot of material. But you can always go out there and fake it. That now you'll be able to throw some words out there that you really know what you're talking about. And no, I'm being facetious. As I said at the beginning of the course, my job with students is to make sure that when they go out there, they have career choices. And I said to someone in the break, the first job shouldn't interest you. It's the fifth job and the sixth job. And you have to be able to have, it's only in those jobs that you come back and you say, now I realize, how important that course was. And so hopefully, just touching on this will make you just a little bit more appealing to a potential employer, may broaden your search out there, and I think it's a huge area of growth, even in the United States today. I don't think you have any choice. You're going to have to begin to move in these directions. So,
any questions from a Chinese student?